Let's solve a few more problems. So question number 34. It says, consider the following differential equation that describes the oscillations of a physical system. Alpha d2y by dt square plus beta dy by dt plus gamma y is equal to 0. If alpha and beta are held fixed, alpha beta fixed, and gamma is increased, then we have four options. Which one is correct one? So this is basically the equation of motion of a damped oscillating system. Equation of motion of a damped oscillating system, basically. So I have mentioned a few notes. Number one, the decrease in amplitude caused by dissipative forces is called damping, like viscous force, air drag, all these things. The corresponding motion is called the motion of a damping system or damped motion. The dissipative or damping force is proportional to the velocity. That is, if damping is equal to minus b Vx, that we can write minus b dx by dt. In most of the cases, it is proportional to the velocity. It could be proportional to velocity square, velocity cube, or any other form. But most of the cases, generally, it is proportional to the velocity, where b is a constant that describes the strength of damping, and negative sign shows that the force is always opposite in direction to the velocity. That is the case of damping, it always acting against the motion of the body. So the net force acting on the body will be minus kx minus b dx by dt, because F equal to minus kx we already know in the case of the oscillating harmonic motion, oscillating system. And now we are adding the damping, which is minus b dx by dt. So this is the net force. According to Newton's second law, force is equal to m dt d2x by dt square. So therefore, we can write minus kx plus b dx by dt minus kx minus b dx by dt is equal to m d2x by dt square. So that gives us m d2x by dt square plus b dx by dt plus kx equal to 0. This is we know. So this is the equation of motion of a damped oscillating system. And we are given alpha d2y by dt square plus beta dy dt plus gamma y is equal to 0. So these two equations tells These two equations tell us the same story. The given one describes the motion of a damped system, and we also know the motion of a damped system is m d2x by dt square plus b dx by dt plus kx equal to 0. So if I compare these two equations, I can write alpha is equal to m, alpha is equal to m, beta is equal to b, and gamma is equal to k. In the problem, alpha and beta are kept constant and gamma is increased, and therefore we are given 4 options. We have to find out which one is the correct one. So little bit more, we know that omega is equal to k by m, angular frequency for simple harmonic motion, and we know the equation of motion is m d2 dtx by dt square plus kx equal to 0. That gives us d2x by dt square plus omega square x equal to 0, where omega is equal to square root of k by m, and the solution is x equal to a cos omega t plus phi. We know that. This is the solution of a simple harmonic motion. Now, since we already got that the given equation is a damped one, therefore its solution should be like some sort of damping parameter is there with this solution, simple harmonic motion solution, because the m d2x by dt square plus kx equal to 0 is our equation of motion of a simple harmonic motion. Now I apply a damping force that now gives me the equation of motion of a damped oscillating system, which is m d2x by dt square plus b dx by dt plus kx equal to 0. And we are given the same sort of equation, alpha d2y by dt square plus beta dy by dt plus gamma y equals to 0, where alpha is equal to m, beta is equal to b, and gamma is equal to k. So that means we have to have some sort of damping factor with the solution of simple harmonic motion. So our solution should be like, since we are given in terms of y, so I'll write y is equal to amplitude A is there, cos omega t plus phi is for simple harmonic motion, omega is the angular frequency. Now we have a damping system, therefore our angular frequency will be definitely different. So that is denoted by w omega dash, and damping decreases exponentially due to that damping amplitude decreases exponentially. So I am putting e to the power minus dt, a factor with this cos omega t plus phi. Now in this case, omega will be replaced by omega dash, because my angular frequency of a damped oscillating system will be different. So e to the power minus dt represents our exponential decay. That is the damping factor. So our omega dash, which is the frequency of oscillation of a damping system, must be equal to a square root of k by m, that is coming from here because of the simple harmonic case, plus or minus some sort of a factor, because I don't know whether my oscillation or angular frequency increases or decreases. I do not need to remember any formula, but I know there should be a factor due to the damping. So this omega dash should be a function of spring constant or force constant K, mass is there, and the damping factor, strength of damping B. So we can write basically this is nothing but function of G. Our K is gamma, M is alpha, B is beta. So our angular frequency must be a function of gamma, alpha, and beta. If you remember the angular frequency, that is good. That's what I put, that omega dash is equal to square root of K by M minus B by 2M square, which is equal to gamma by alpha minus beta by twice M square. This is the actual formula, but we do not need to remember this formula. So since this is a damped oscillating system, naturally the amplitude will decay. So my y-axis is the amplitude, x-axis is my time. With time it will decay. So it will start from maximum and decays down. So this is the amplitude which is decaying. My amplitude is A. So this is how my amplitude is decaying because of this e to the power minus dt, and amplitude decreases as e to the power minus dt, exponentially decaying. In the given problem, alpha, that is our M, and beta, which is nothing but B, are held fixed, and gamma, which is basically K, is increased. Therefore, omega dash, which is K by M plus minus delta, increases because this parameter is fixed if I increase gamma, because this is omega dash is equal to nothing but gamma by M, because K is our gamma and delta is fixed. That means delta, which is a function of alpha and beta, is constant. So if I increase gamma, naturally my angular frequency will increase. So frequency of oscillation increases. Our option A is correct, which says the frequency of oscillation increases. So this is how you can easily solve this kind of problem without knowing the exact formula of angular frequency of a damped oscillating system. And little bit more, there are three types of damping which we know. One is critical damping, second one is over damping, and third one is under damping. And the formula for the angular frequency omega dash of a damped oscillating system is nothing but square root of K by M minus B by 2M whole square. Now the next problem, that is from special theory of relativity. it says three events E1, E2 and E3 occur as observed in S frame. Frame S dash is moving with a speed V with respect to S. In S dash, let T1 dash, T2 dash, T3 dash be the respective times at which E1, E2 and E3 occurred. Then we are given four options and which one is correct. So we are given two reference frames, S and S dash. S dash is moving with a uniform velocity V with respect to S. Both S and S dash are inertial reference frames. So coordinate axes are X, Y, and Z for S with origin O, and X dash, Y dash, and Z dash are the coordinate axes for S dash with origin O dash. Whenever you are going to solve a problem of a special theory of relativity, first thing you need to do is to write down the Lorentz transformation relations, which are X dash equal to gamma X minus Vt, Y dash equal to Y, Z dash equal to Z, and T dash equal to gamma T minus Vx by C square. These are the four relations you must write. Now, it says three events occur. E1 at CT0, X0, E2, CT0, XL, and E3, CT0 and X equals to minus L. So we can write basically this one is E1 at the origin, at the center. Then at X equal to L, we have E2 and then E3 at X equal to minus L. And these three events are simultaneous events because our CT is 0. We need to find out the corresponding times, which are T1 dash, T2 dash, and T3 dash respectively. So for E1 event, our CT1 is 0 and X1 is 0. For E2, our T2 is 0 and X2 is equal to L. And for the event E3, our T3 is 0 and X3 is minus L. T0 means time is 0 because C is the velocity of light, which is 3 into 10 to the power 8 meter per second. Therefore, our time is 0. So all the events are happening at the time t equals to 0. So since we need to transform T1 to T1 dash for event E1, so S to S dash we are transforming, T2 to T2 dash, and T3 to T3 dash. So since we are dealing with the time, therefore we will be using the time transformation relation, which is T dash equal to gamma T minus Vx by C square. So we can find out in S dash frame for event E1, T1 dash is equal to gamma T1 minus Vx1 by C square. My T1 is 0, X1 is 0, therefore T1 dash is also 0. For E2, T2 dash is equal to gamma T2 minus Vx2 by C square, that is equal to gamma, our T2 is 0, X2 is L, so VL by C square, that gives us minus gamma VL by C square. And we know gamma is nothing but 1 by square root of 1 minus V square by C square, which is greater than 1. Similarly, for the event E3, we can find T3 dash is equal to gamma T3 minus Vx3 by C square. My T3 is 0, X3 is minus L. That means gamma 0 plus VL by C square, because minus minus will give me plus. So that is gamma VL by C square. So our T1 dash is 0, T2 dash is minus gamma VL by C square, and C3 and T3 dash is gamma VL by C square. So naturally, T2 dash is the smallest value. So T2 dash is smaller than T1 dash, which is 0. Which is smaller than T3 dash, which is gamma VL by C square. So option A, T2 dash is smaller than T1 dash is smaller than T3 dash. Also, I just want to mention a point over here. In general, whenever we talk about a happening of an event in a space-time with respect to a reference frames, initial reference frame S, P is an event. So 0, X, Y, Z. We write our space-time coordinates are X, Y, Z, and T. But here it is given C, T. So don't get confused, because the CT is used when we talk about the invariance of space-time interval. That means, say, C square, T dash square minus X dash square plus Y dash square plus Z dash square in one reference frame, say H dash, is equal to C square, T square minus X square plus Y square plus G square. If I use that form, C square, T square, X square, Y square, Z square, then only our space-time interval will become invariant. That's what we write CT instead of T, to make sure that dimensionally it is correct with respect to X, Y, Z, because X, Y, Z are the position coordinates or distance. Our CT also represents distance, because C is the velocity, which is distance by time, then multiplied by time, that gives me distance. That's why when we talk about the space-time interval is Lorentz invariant, in that time we use CT instead of T. So here in this problem, it is given like CT. So don't get confused that why it is CT, why not only T. Now, let's have a look at problem number 14, which says, in the figure below, a point is the object, point B is the image formed by the lens. So point B is the image of the point object A. L1, L2, L3 denote the optical path length of the three rays 1, 2, 3 respectively. Identify the correct statement. Here, one special term, optical path length, is used. OPL, we write. So basically, it is proportional to the time required for light to travel between 2 points. So 2 points A and B, the distance between them is D, and there might be a refractive index. That means a medium is inserted, or there is no medium. That means air is there. So in that case, our optical path length is nothing but going from point A to B, ns, which is a function of the distance, and ds, which is the length element or line element. So if the medium is homogeneous, so we can directly write OPL is equal to ND, where D is the distance between 2 points A and B. So you see in the problem, the light is going from point A to B. The distance is, say, D. There is a medium of refractive index, say, N, and outside it is air. So optical path length is ND through the lens, plus we can also add this side and this side. So it will be just summation of, say, ND through lens plus refractive index of air is 1, I can say, and this distance is, say, D1, and then from this side to this is D2. So this is same for all the rays. So therefore, time will also be the same. Therefore, the answer A is the correct one. Option A is the correct answer. A is L1 is equal to L2 is equal to L3. I have added a few things. So basically what is happening here? The point object at A is emitting light in the form of spherical waves. So they are basically carrying the energy, and the rays are the direction of the rays are perpendicular to the wave front. So what I said is wave fronts are the surface of constant OPL, constant optical path length, from the source point. Ray indicate the direction of energy propagation because waves are going like this. So rays are indicating the direction of energy propagation, and they are normal to the wavefront surface. So optical path length for all the rays, ray number 1, ray number 2, and ray number 3 are same. So option A is correct. Next, question 16. So we are given a circuit and the output Y is 4 options are given. So basically, we know that this portion is nothing but an exclusive OR you can say XOR gate. The truth table is if A and B are my inputs and Y is my output, then for A and B0, it is 0. For A0, B1, it is 1. For A1, B0, it is 1. For both A and B1, it is 0. So we know the statement that the output Y of the XOR gate will be in the state 1 if either A or B, but not both, are in the state 1. So if either A or B is 1, then our output is 1. Otherwise, it is 0. Now, according to the problem, we are also given a NOT with the exclusive OR gate. There is a not. That means we'll have the output Y bar. So this is what is shown here. For output Y 0, the final output will be 1. For 1, it will be 0. For 1 again, it will be 0. And for 0, it will be 1. So this is the truth table for this logic gate combination. Now, in this problem again, we see that our one of the inputs is grounded. So if I consider this is B, which is grounded, that means B is 0. So I can have truth table A1 B0 gives me 1, and then Y bar will be my output, that will give me 0. And I could have also A0 and B0, therefore my output will be 0, and the final, that means bar of Y will be 1. So basically, my final output of this section, which is Y bar, is nothing but A bar, because when A is 0, our output is 1, and when A is 1, our output is 0. So from the first combination, I get my output A bar, which is the input of the second stage, that means this one, and input A is also acting as an input of second stage. So my inputs are A and A bar. Therefore, my output will be using again exclusive OR and then using NOT. So A bar, the output is Y, and then bar of that, which is Y bar. So A1 gives, and then A dash is, or A bar is 0, my output will be 1, and then my Y bar will be 0, which is my final output from stage 2. And then when A is 0, definitely A dash or A bar will be 1. So my Y will be 1, and therefore after the NOT operation, I will have 1 bar, which is 0. So the output from the second stage is 0. That output is acting as an input in the last stage, or the stage number 3rd stage, and A remains the another input. So I have final outcome. A, B are my inputs. So I have used Y bar as my B. Y bar is the output of the second stage. So my truth table is A, B, Y. That is the exclusive OR gate. So A1, B0 gives me 1, and 0, 0 gives me 0 because it is exclusive OR gate. And therefore my final output, which is Y bar, will be for 1 output, my final output will be 0. For Y output, my final output will be 1. So again, it is just like A bar. When A is 1, I am getting 0. And when A is 0, I am getting 1. So my final output is A bar. Option D is A bar. Therefore, option D is the right one. So we'll stop here. In the next lecture, I'll discuss a few more problems.